We know something fundamental is wrong in the world. March 10, 2023, the second largest bank failure in US history went quietly unnoticed.
Briefly speak about what's happening in Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank.
We struggle to make ends meet. We've got more pressure and less time.
Americans can have confidence that the banking system is safe.
Our standard of living, quality of life and purchasing power are dramatically going down. I had the opportunity to fly all the way from the Great Barrier Reef, Australia to Richmond, Virginia via Washington, DC, home of the rich men and women who control and perpetuate this broken money system that keeps you trapped by design. Like most of us, I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay. People around the world, they're starting to wake up to the fact that the dollar ain't shit and we're taxed to no end. The elites, they're spreading lies, misinformation and propaganda about a new form of money that they cannot control, that gives freedom and power back to the citizens. So let's hit the streets and see what people think.
All I know is I hear people
waiting out to see how it goes.
I'm not familiar. No. So this is interesting to me. This is educational.
So investing my money and making sure my money's still going to be there.
We now live in a world of endless wars perpetuated by endless money printing, of rising costs, homelessness, addiction and pandemics.
So just couple of steps from us, we're seeing individuals sleeping on the streets.
You may ask, how did this all begin? The Panic of 1907, also known as the Knickerbocker Crisis, was a financial meltdown of the New York Stock Exchange with the fall of almost 50% from the peak only a year before. Rapidly, the panic spread throughout the nation where many states and local bank and businesses entered bankruptcy. The panic occurred during a time of economic recession and there were numerous runs on banks. Imagine lines out the door down the street. The banks, they did not have enough cash on hand and the panic had escalated. JP Morgan, the individual, stepped in. He summoned dozens of the financial elites in New York to his private library on Madison Avenue and essentially ordered them to contribute to a $25 million pool that would be used to backstop the system. Morgan, he locked them in the office and made them stay there throughout the night until they all agreed to his plan. This pool of money ended the panic and JP Morgan, he saved the day. Many, they worried that this could happen again, so a secret meeting was organised to hatch plans to create a central bank. Now, due to the power a central bank has over a population, this meeting was not publicised and went largely unnoticed. In November 1910, 6 men, Nelson Aldrich, 8 Piet Andrew, Henry Davidson, Arthur Sheldon, Frank Vanderlip and Paul Warburg met at the Jekyll Island Club off the coast of Georgia to write a plan to reform the nation's banking system. This secret meeting led to the creation of the Federal Reserve System, often shortened to the Fed, only 3 short years later, on December 23, 1913. Now, the Fed, they're the central banking system of the United States.
Do you know who owns the Federal Reserve?
I actually do not.
Who would you believe owns the Federal Reserve?
I have no idea.
Well, do you think it'd be the government, private entities, shareholders?
The government.
Do you know who owns the Federal Reserve?
No idea.
Who would you think owns it?
You would think the American government.
As a banker, who do you think owns the Federal Reserve?
The federal government. Who owns the Federal Reserve?
Private shareholders.
Really?
It's a private company. It was created with the enactment of the Federal Reserve Act. The promise and objective of the Fed came for the desire for central control of the monetary system in order to alleviate further financial crises. Over the years, events such as the Great Depression in the 1930s, the Great Recession during the 2000s have led to the expansion of the roles and responsibilities of the Federal Reserve System. It has not stopped these events from happening. It is worth noting that while the Federal Reserve banks in the United States and many other central banks globally are private corporations owned by private shareholders, they are also an extension of the government. In the US, the 7-member Federal Reserve Board of Governors is nominated by the President and confirmed by the Senate, giving the government significant influence over the Fed's decision-making and policy direction. Take note, The largest shareholder of the Fed is the bank JP Morgan. Neither federal, and there are no reserves with the Federal Reserve. Let's step forward 1 year after the Fed was created to the era of World War I. The world ended into a long and bloody battle on the 28th of July 1914. The US did not enter until much later on the 6th of April 1917 to fund their involvement in this war. The federal government raised taxes and borrowed money from the general population. Very little new money was created. The borrow-in effect was called the Liberty Loan and was made operational through the sale of Liberty bonds. In World War I, it was possible to print money in a more roundabout way. The government could sell a bond to the newly created Federal Reserve. The Fed would pay for it by creating a deposit account for the government, which the government could then draw upon to pay its expenses. By the end of the war, the government's debt was more than $25 billion. As the war came to a close, an armistice was called on the 11th of November 1918. The guns fell silent. The airmen hung up their hats and goggles. Factories began to shut down production lines in the summer of 1918, leading to job losses and fewer opportunities for returning soldiers. This immediately led to a recession following World War I. By all accounts, it was a mild and extremely short-lasting, only for 7 months, from August 1918 to March 1919. A second, much more severe recession followed shortly after, between January 1920 and July 1921, when the global economy contracted sharply. In the long term, World War I was a net positive for the American economy and a devastation for all those who sacrificed their lives. So we fast forward and move into World War II. The planes are faster, the guns are bigger. World War II, the 1st of September 1939 to the 2nd of September 1945. To help pay for this war, dollars were needed for defense. The United States government increased corporate and personal income taxes. The federal income tax entered the lives of many Americans. It is worth noting that in 1939, fewer than 8 million people filed individual income tax returns. In 1945, nearly 50 million people filed. The withholding system of payroll deductions was a wartime development which sadly it never went away. The government also borrowed from the public by selling war bonds similar to the Liberty Bond from World War I. The Fed played a large part in these war efforts. Directly due to the war, the United States ended up with a large part of the world's gold reserves. In 1944, as World War II victory was seen as imminent, a new international monetary system was forged. Delegates from 44 nations met in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. Delegates to the conference agreed to establish the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and what became the World Bank Group. The meeting made the US dollar the global reserve currency. At this time, 1 ounce of gold was pegged to $35. The world pegged their money to the US dollar and by default was backed by gold. The system of currency convertibility that emerged from Bretton Woods lasted until 1971. Something happened in 1971 where that fiat currency, it used to be money. Do you know what happened? President Richard Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard. Back in the day, in 1971, President Richard Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard. So the dollar used to be backed by gold. At the moment, now it's called fiat currency. Do you know what that means?
No, I have not heard of that.
Yeah.
Me either.
Something happens in 1971 because this $1 used to be money, now it's currency. Do you know what happened in 1971?
Yeah, we stopped being backed by gold.
When the government controls the money printer, they can fund operations through debasement. The government over time, they've realised the immense power of debasement. So as time has passed, they've increasingly removed the barriers, enabling them to better tap the pockets of the populace. When money is printed, the price of everything goes up. We've seen this very recently after the money printing of 2020. I don't know if you've noticed that everything since COVID or 2020 has gotten more expensive.
Right, of course. Yeah, inflation.
100% inflation?
Yeah, inflation, yep.
Do you know what caused inflation?
No, I don't.
It's when they printed so much money. That's for you. It's a $1 bill.
Yeah.
And what happens with when the government prints money is that dollar, every time they print money, that dollar can buy less and less and less. Yeah. So like this nice car that we're in here, before COVID would have cost a certain amount. Yeah. After COVID,
went up like a motherfucker.
Yeah. Back in 1971, countries around the world, they started noticing the US was printing more dollars than it held in gold reserves. So they started to cash in their dollars for gold. The US very quickly was losing control of the situation. On August 15, 1971, US President Richard Nixon slammed shut the gold window. This act to defend the dollar was stated as a temporary measure. We have not been on a gold standard since this date, and every currency around the world is now called fiat. So that's for you. That's a US $1 bill. It's fiat currency. Do you know what the word fiat means and what fiat currency is?
I do not.
I've got a $1 bill here for you.
Okay.
It's called fiat currency. Do you know what that means?
Currency?
Fiat.
Fiat? No, what does it mean?
That's the US $1 bill. They make a beautiful bookmark there. So that's for you to keep. We call that fiat currency.
Yes.
Do you know what fiat means?
No. What? Tell me.
Decree. By decree. So once upon a time, the dollar used to be backed by gold. Do you know when we...
Our beautiful airplane.
These guys above us are just keeping the money nice and secure. So actually, in regards to that, I'm not joking. By decree, it is backed up by military might and fear of imprisonment. Like if you don't pay your taxes with the US dollar, if you're living in the US, you are going to go to jail.
Yes.
It has been said the dollar ain't shit and we're taxed no end. With the amount of money printing in recent years, we are at the start of a debt spiral. Why do we pay taxes when the Federal Reserve can print as much money, or the government can ask the Federal Reserve to print an endless amount of money?
That's a good question. I assume taxes for infrastructure and education and those type of things, but you're right, they can print an endless amount of money.
Yeah. After all these decades of our money being debased, it can understandably feel overwhelming and sinister.
Property values plummeted. It was the worst crisis of my banking career, which has been over 30 years.
So you're saying inflation, like rents and everything's
Yes.
going up. What's that been like for you since 2020, mainly?
Difficult, living paycheck to paycheck. Even with my job, they're giving, they're quote unquote giving us a 8% raise for the cost of living. Everything is still going up.
Definitely felt the effects of inflation. Yeah, that it's costs so much more to buy groceries and gas, and yeah, the dollar doesn't go as far as it used to.
Yeah.
Very, very bad years.
Yeah. And what was that like for you personally?
Oh, for me, from paying my bills with $30,000 a year went to taking $50,000 a year just to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Not to buy clothes or buy food, but just paying the rent, paying the electricity bills, all that kind of stuff. Just it went up astronomically.
Yeah.
Very, very, very bad years.
But there is hope. There is a system that was born out of the 2008 financial crisis. Governments, they realise they have no control over this, and they are starting to panic because it gives the power back to the general population. It's the world's best hedge against inflation. Do you know what inflation is?
Yeah, your money's worth less.
Money has certain traits. The more traits, the better it performs. The 6 main traits of sound money are: it's divisible, transferable, it's exchangeable, durable, portable, and scarce. And now we come to Bitcoin.
Personally, I didn't trust it,
Yeah.
so I thought it might be a Ponzi scheme.
Before you call it a scam, listen, forget what the media tell you. They lie, no surprises there, right? Bitcoin, it's not crypto, has nothing to do with FTX or SBF, or the wild casino full of dog coins.
The most recent thing is probably talking about Shiba Inu.
Yeah.
Something super cheap, you can buy 1 million of them.
That have absolutely no value. It is not a Ponzi scheme. Do you know anything about Bitcoin?
I don't know anything about Bitcoin.
Nothing at all?
Nothing.
Had you heard about Bitcoin before?
I've heard of it, but not very familiar.
Yep. And what are your thoughts about Bitcoin? What have you heard in regards to Bitcoin?
Personally, I didn't trust it,
Yep.
so I thought it might be a Ponzi scheme.
And have you ever heard about Bitcoin before I asked you?
I've heard of it, but it always seemed underground, and it always seemed creepy, like you have to buy it off the black web.
What do you think about Bitcoin?
I know very little about it. I think I'm the wrong generation. My son is a big advocate.
What makes Bitcoin so unique? It solves the double spend problem for the first time in human history without a trusted middleman. This means, unlike a picture on the internet, you cannot copy it and spend the same coin twice. Gets a little bit technical. I'll actually give you a book, Beers for Bitcoin, which makes it really simple to understand. It uses the world's largest decentralized computer network to secure and check that you are the owner and sender of your Bitcoin. But they're all solving this mathematical problem to make it possible. Bitcoin is in fact the hardest form of money to ever be created, with set rules, no rulers, and backed by math. So let me explain. As you know, inflation is affecting everyone. That's the price increases you see everywhere. When you go to the supermarket, you get less and it's costing you a lot more. Gasoline, along with everything else, is going up. That's due to the currency that has been printed in recent years. What makes Bitcoin so special is there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. Each Bitcoin can be broken down into 100 million units called Satoshis. So far, 93% of the total supply of Bitcoin has been mined. About 19.53 million Bitcoin are out there. Once Bitcoin gets to 21 million Bitcoin, no more will ever be created, and this will not happen until the year 2140. Bitcoin is the world's scarcest bearer asset that you can own and take custody of. It's very much like owning very rare real estate or fine art that you can move anywhere around the world, which allows anyone, no matter their income or their financial status, to be able to buy, send, and receive very small or very large amounts of value stored in Bitcoin. You can buy 1 cent, $5 worth, or $5 billion worth of Bitcoin. It is for everyone. It does not discriminate. So I'm sending it. There we go.
Wow, very fast.
It doesn't matter if I was in Australia, it would happen just as quick.
Wow.
I could be anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And you've just received 210,000 Satoshis.
Nice.
And this is the first time in human history that us, the people, can participate in a new asset class. I'm going to hit send and just watch this for a sec. There you go, 210,000 Satoshis.
Okay.
What I love, no government, individual, nation, corporation, or entity can shut down or control the system. They have tried and they have failed and they'll continue to fail. There's no middleman, no third party you need to trust or ask for permission to use Bitcoin. As a technology and a revolution, Bitcoin is the world's first globally accessible public money. Unlike that dollar, they can't make more Bitcoin. They can't print more Bitcoin. This is due to the decentralized network that secures what is known as the Bitcoin blockchain. The blockchain really simply is all the transactions from the last 10 minutes linked to the transaction from this 10 minutes. Once a block is created and joined, it cannot be changed. This is why governments mislead you about Bitcoin. No one can stop you spending or receiving Bitcoin. You can send it anywhere around the world almost instantly to anyone with an internet connection. I'm going to hit send. Doesn't matter where I am in the world, this is just over the internet. Anyone with an internet connection can see it. There you go.
Popped up immediately.
Pretty cool, hey?
Yeah.
So you can do whatever you want, you can cash it out. I use the Amber app, which is a Bitcoin only exchange. You could use Bitrefill and use that and buy gift cards straight away. So I use that today to be able to fill up with fuel. Bitcoin, it gives the power back to the individual. It takes it away from the central banks. Bitcoin is a monetary good and an attractive store of value in a very progressively digital age. Depending on where you are in the world, it's really easy to buy and store and send Bitcoin. Because it's new technology, there are a few things to be aware of. Unfortunately, people will always try scam those who have less information than they do. Bitcoin, it's actually really easy to understand. It just takes a little bit of time. Here's 5 very easy steps to get you started. Step number 1 is learn. Listen to podcasts and read Bitcoin books.
Yeah.
But what I'm gonna do
That's cool.
is give you this book, Beers for Bitcoin. It's the simplest way because Bitcoin can feel very overwhelming to understand. I've made some recommendations in the description as well as a checklist that you can download for free. Below you'll find interviews I've done with the smartest minds in Bitcoin as well as some channels that provide great educational information. Regarding books, Beers for Bitcoin, very great place to start. Very small, short, easy to understand. Basically the ABC of Bitcoin. If you know a little bit already, the Bitcoin Standard and then Bitcoin Evangelism will fill in all those gaps. And I have listed a few more for the voracious readers out there. Step number 2 is not financial advice, but buy just a little bit of Bitcoin. Find a Bitcoin only exchange, as they're less likely to collapse and steal your funds. In Australia, I use the Amber app. They are also in the USA, so is Swan. Otherwise, do a search and find one people trust. I have linked a few below. Some helpful tips: only buy a little bit to start with and try sending it to a Bitcoin wallet. As this is just a trial of sending your Bitcoin, you can download and learn how to use Wallet of Satoshi. Step number 3 is take self-custody. This is the most important step by far and the one most people struggle with. On the main chain, with that hardware wallet, very slow, you use that USB, you get your 24 words and you maybe separate them or put them in a very safe place, write them down on steel, not paper.
Yeah.
Because if you lose those 24 words, it's
Oh, yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
Like, you can't get it back. There's nobody you can call.
Yeah, like the guy right now that has what, all the 7,000 Bitcoin and on a key that he can't unlock.
Here are some pointers. To truly own your Bitcoin, you need to hold the private keys. To do this, you require a hardware wallet or a cold storage device. These are devices that very simply, they just hold your password and allow you to move or spend your Bitcoin. Trezor, they're a cheap, good option. They're very easy to learn and use. Only buy from their official website, which is below. When setting up a hardware wallet, write down the backup words on steel. They'll either be 12 or 24 words. I use Cedar, but there's many options out there. Please make sure you never show anyone these words ever. Store them in a very, very safe place. And again, make sure they're stored on something other than paper. If you lose those words, game over. So just take your time and get it right the first time. Step number 4, seek professional advice. If you need help with buying, moving, or storing your Bitcoin, you want to talk to someone who understands this asset class. No matter where you are in the world, you can reach out to someone like the Bitcoin advisor. They can provide you with the know-how and the information you need. And the first consultation is free. They have people all around the world that can help you buy a large amount or a small amount, secure them, lead you through the process. So in the event of your passing, your Bitcoin will be managed and end up where it's intended for it to go. Looking Glass Education, they're a great online resource as well. Details in the description. Step number 5, never stop learning. Bitcoin has so many fascinating features. The use case, function, acceptance is always growing. You can go to Bitcoin meetups, join the social side. I use Orange Pill app to connect with Bitcoiners near me, or especially when I'm traveling. X.com, formerly Twitter, has a large Bitcoin community. Learn the difference between Lightning and Bitcoin. There's a layer on top, or multiple layers on top, and we call this Lightning, like at light speed basically.
Oh, wow.
Basically, it's like gold in a vault versus cash in your wallet. It is best to hold your main Bitcoin on the base chain in cold storage and use the Lightning network for only little small amounts. BitRefill is an easy way to buy gift cards with your Bitcoin, so you can use Bitcoin almost anywhere if you need to pay for something in fiat currency. Ask plenty of questions. The community, we're here to help. Remember, Bitcoin can be volatile. That does not mean it's risky. Give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe, enjoy this video as we take you on the next step of your Bitcoin journey. I'll see you there.